start by acknowledging the traditional custodian of land and middle and pay my respect to the elders past, present, and future. Also like to respect the elders, indigenous elders who may be present in this room, and I'd like to acknowledge the ongoing cultural and spiritual connections to the land. Yes, there is a spelling error. Let's be honest about it. I got this when we were suffering from 4 days of heat wave. I was in the library, public library, and I basically had enough. And I thought, you know what? Make a slide presentation. How hard can it be? Going through the slides this morning and said to myself, of course there's a spelling error. In my defense, English is my second language. And I just, now you can get a sense on how I present my sessions. I like to use humor, I like to make fun of myself. And I know some of you are sitting there thinking, but he looks like he just skipped school. Isn't he supposed to be at uni? I want you to hold on that thought, and I will explain why I'm going to ask you to hold on that thought. Now, we've been sitting down for the past hour and a half, maybe. So I also like to do audience participation. Shock horror. I know you hate doing it. That's why it's amusing for me. So, if I can ask everyone to please stand up. Please stand up. Ah, little mama. Can't we just have lunch? It's 12 o'clock. Now, to the best of your physical ability, please have a stretch. Stretch any way you want. Arms up. If you do yoga, you can do the whole touch the toes thing. I can't do that. Move around. WHS, please don't overstretch yourself. Yeah, all good. Get some fresh air. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. One last one. Breathe in. Breathe out, and you can sit down now. Thank you. Ah, yes, a little bit of a breaking the cycle. And that's what we've been talking about all morning, breaking the cycle. I am not going to do this because I am reading the room. So I've been kind of observing you in the morning, and I'm thinking, you know what, I'm not going to ask you to do reflections. So I'm going to flip back to the acknowledgement. What I'm going to do instead is do this little exercise that also requires audience participation. So on your table, you have Post-it notes. I want everyone to grab a few Post-it notes. I don't know how the English people say it. A few leaves of Post-it notes, a few notes of Post-it notes, I don't know. Just make sure that everyone actually have Post-it notes in front of them. Yeah. Everyone got Post-it notes. Everyone should have a pen. There's a lot of pens on the table. Yeah? Fantastic. And if you do have some difficulties of writing, or if you just can't be bothered, sometimes people can't be bothered, just keep a tally in your head. Just keep it in your mind of what I'm asking you to do. So some of you may be familiar with this exercise. It's called the privilege walk exercise. But obviously, I can't ask you to all stand up, create a line at the back of the room, and then do a privilege walk. It's just physically impossible. Logistical nightmare as well. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to read out 10 statements. And if the statement brings truth to you, I want you to add one. Put one on the Post-it notes. If the statement doesn't bring truth to you, then you just stay put. Stay put is basically, you do nothing. You might cheat. Look at your colleague and say, what are you writing? And if I'm asking you to step back, that means deduct one. Are you ready? Yeah? Are we ready? And I forgot that I didn't actually have my phone with me, so I don't know what time is it. Just remind me when I'm over time. All right, we ready? Yeah? Can I get a shout out of yes? Yeah, good. You're awake. Well done. Okay. Statement number 1. Anyone in this room who born a male at 1. So anyone who were not born a male, you stay put, or you didn't write anything on the post-it notes. Anyone with a university degree, at 1. Anyone who came from an Anglo background, at 1. Anyone whose English is their first language, at 1. Anyone under the age of 50, at 1. Anyone who identifies as heterosexual, at 1. Anyone who identifies as trans or gender diverse, -1. Anyone who identifies as Indigenous Australians, -1. Anyone who have experienced racism based on your skin color, -1. Last one. Anyone with a driving license, +1. Oh, almost everyone +1, well done. Now, this is a little bit of reflection. If you can please turn around to someone who's sitting next to you and just share your score. Share your score and have maybe about half a minute reflection. If we can regroup, please. Thank you. Okay, another audience participation, and yes, you do have to yell out. So, one person only, please, because we don't have the whole afternoon. One person that wants to share your reflection on what we just done. Oh, come on. Hey, at the back.
I'm lucky I have a driver's license, I have a point.
Well done, yes, a driving license, and you're probably thinking, yeah, driving license, what's the purpose of it, what's the point? Well, actually, if someone can't drive like me, if I'm unable to drive, it actually limits my work opportunities, because especially in your area, where a lot of positive description actually requires someone to have a driving license. So something that is similar, that is something that is simple, so if something that is simple can actually put us in a lower position. Marginalization is about the process of putting individuals into box and also putting them as the oppressed group. So I'm going to flick through the slides, but most of the time I'm just going to actually talk to you. Diversity. Oh, dear me, diversity. I mean, Ian gave a great speech this morning about diversity. Diversity is a term that we use almost every day. Anyone who's a manager of diversity and inclusion is so sick of this term. Someone who actually a diversity trainer, I have to own the term and I have to redefine it, redefine the concept of diversity. And I'm going to walk through with you why we have to redefine it. So when we talk about diversity, we often think about the other. We often think about those who do not fit the picture of the dominant group. So it's always about someone else. It's not about us, someone else. Diversity when it comes to gender, diversity when it comes to race, social class, indigeneity, I do apologize, I still can't pronounce that word, but the age, physical ability, cognitive ability, and many more. Diversity always seen as the other, but as Ian reminded us this morning, diversity is all of us. Hence the exercise that we begin with. Turn around to someone sitting next to you, you start comparing your scores, and you start to realize that all of us are diverse in one way or another. So diversity is not just about the other. Us, we, here, we are the other. We are the diverse group. And where I am talking about is about intersectionality. diversity often overlook intersectionality. And what is intersectionality? And I am going to, once again, going through what is intersectionality in my definition. We often don't think about the connections between two or more of marginalized identities. And quite often, when we are confronted with an individual who have two or more oppressed identities, we have no idea where to put them. How do I put them in this diversity box? And I have so many experiences personally when people just don't know how and where to locate me in their diversity framework. So the problem that we have with diversity is we tend to homogenize people. We tend to just see people based on our understanding about a particular group. Yeah? And I've been hearing quite a few conversations this morning about implementing what we know, what we think of a diverse person, and we force people to fit with that interpretation. Sadly, we rarely reflect on our own understanding of diversity and whether we actually need to change our perceptions, our knowledge, our understanding, and our approach to diversity and intersectionality. And this is a copy and paste job from the diversity framework by the department. And I acknowledge there are people in the department in this room here. I do acknowledge it, so it's not copywriting. And this is what I said about diversity. And it works. Once again, grouping people based on a specific category. How about intersectionality? Surprise, surprise, and we all know this by heart. People who live in rural and regional areas can also be part of LGBTI, can also be of culturally and linguistically diverse communities, can also be part of the indigenous communities as well. Quite often, when we talk about indigenous communities, we often forget that there are indigenous communities or indigenous individuals who belong to more than just one group. So, a prime example, someone that I know who's Maltese and indigenous. And yet, people quite often having a little bit of confusion about where to place this person, instead of asking this person, so what identity? What identity that speaks truth to you? What identity that you feel that you belong in? And empower you to create that version of identity, celebrating it, while we, the one who works in the background, we the one who have to sort ourselves out, not others. So intersectionality, and I do apologize, I am going to flick through this to my notes, because intersectionality is about that recognition of the different identities that we all have in this room. In this room, when we're working with the consumers in the overall general population, it is about all of those different aspects. It is not about the or when it comes to intersectionality. Oh, we have race here, we have LGBTI, we kind of tick in the box. I used to work for an organization who loves to tick the box, oh, we got LGBTI, tick, we got 2 people, we got someone with disability, tick 1 person. Well, how about someone with physical cognitive ability? Not sure, maybe we should hire someone, question mark. How about someone from religious, culturally diverse communities? We got you. You got 1 person, right? It's like, no, the reception staff, we got 2 actually. We got the reception staff and a project worker. We are so diverse. Right. Indigenous, we got 1, or they got 1 indigenous. So once again, it is kind of forcing people to fit into boxes, instead of actually recognizing there is an and. And this is where I'm going to bring my personal example. So, as someone who's standing in front of you here, I have so many ands, and quite often people don't know where to put me. Not only that I'm Asian, duh. Just in case you don't know, hello, I'm Asian. I'm also Indonesian, so I have a certain nationality, a certain ethnicity. I'm a Muslim, I have a spirituality, I have a faith, I have a religion, I am a gay man, in case you don't know, hello. I have a sexuality, My gender identity doesn't fit the binary, so I have a lot of ands. And yet when I'm talking to several people, organizations, community consultation group, focus group, whatever you call it, people often get confused. So what contribution are you going to bring to the discussion today? Are you going to talk from the Asian perspective? By the way, there is no such thing as an Asian perspective. In case you don't know, we rule more than half of the world. What is an Asian perspective? Who knows? Are you going to talk from an LGBTI perspective? Well, actually no, because LGBTI, I am not lesbian, I am not bisexual, I am not intersex. I do kind of fluctuate between gender diverse communities, but I can't speak for the whole communities. Are you going to talk from the Muslim perspective? Oh God, again. Yeah. Where do I begin? Even within my family, my mom and dad having theological discussion almost every time we speak about faith and religion, because there is no one Muslim perspective. So this is to ask you to start thinking, when we're thinking about diversity, is to actually expand our mind from finding people to fit the boxes that we create, to actually sit down, reflect, and think about our approach, our understanding, and our views, what diversity is. And we're inviting people in. We're inviting people in not so we can fit them in the boxes. We're inviting people in so we can reflect and listen from their unique experiences. And I have to acknowledge intersectionality, Kimberly Crenshaw, who came up with this great framework. I do have a video. I don't know how to play it. No. There's our backup ones. I got backup ones. Lots of backup ones. Can we play it? Ah, right. Okay. Sorry, folks. So we're going to move on to the next one. And this is where I'll talk about the difference between diversity and intersectionality. If you look at the diversity wheel, this is freely available from the web. Once again, we group people with a very, very, very strong line across for each identity. Intersectionality is a little bit more fluid than that. It actually recognizes that what we know is influenced by the bigger pictures. I call this the big thing, the big pictures. Colonialization, patriarchy, political values, affiliations, education, history. Then we come to the isms. So many isms in the world. Racism, sexism, genderism, ableism, ageism. Any other isms I haven't mentioned? Probably. Then we talk about individual characteristics. They are influenced by these isms. And this is where the individual sits as someone who both privileged and also marginalized, and how does that power intersects, and how is that power being played out at a different time in our lives. Intersectionality is fluid, it's contextual, it's not as rigid as this. Again, not going to work. So when I was asked to deliver this keynote address, I'm thinking, I asked Carolina, I was like, are you sure? Because I am not from the aged care service. I am from community health background. I'm from community empowerment development background. And Carolina said, yeah, I'm sure you can have it. I'm like, fingers crossed. So this is coming from the empowerment book, the picture. We're talking about aged care, we're talking about LGBTI seniors. The department has this LGBTI action plan that they just released a couple of weeks ago. And this is some of the stuff that we're going to reflect on today. So this is another reflection. So now that you have a little bit of an understanding of what intersectionality is, turn around to the person who sits next to you and start thinking about how intersectionality might apply to someone who identifies as part of the LGBTI communities. Yeah, once again, you can use your post-it notes to write your reflection and just spend a minute or two talking to each other. Yeah? Thanks, everyone. If we can regroup, please. Thank you so much. I'm loving that I heard murmurs in the room. Murmurs in the room means that you are communicating with each other. In conferences and forums like this, we tend to be not communicating with each other. So thank you so much for doing that. I am not going to ask you to share your reflections. We simply don't have time. I'm just checking the time. But I'm going to give you an example. An example that I kind of thought might help you in case you don't know about it, or might confirm what you already know. If this works. So once again, intersectionality is about acknowledging a lot of different marginalized and oppressions. Yeah? So we got, this is me imagining what I will be like when I turn 80 or 85. So what sort of experiences will I encounter, and how will I bring that experiences to the surface profiles? So of course, racism is the main thing, but on top of racism, there's actually a bigger issue. The issue of colonialization, white privilege, ethnocentrism, that's the big ticket. There's homophobia as an ism, but what is the big ticket? Patriarchy. Patriarchy that actually resulted in homophobia, because patriarchy is about a certain male dominance, and part of that man's dominance is to be heterosexual and not to be seen as weak. Ageism, I thought, what is the big picture behind ageism? And capitalism. When we are only valued if we are being a productive member of society, and productive, it means economic production. That means that we can still work. Once we are unable to work, due to our age, ability, and so on, then we become ageism, ableism. So it's all about money. Capitalism is the big ticket pictures. So these are some of the stuff that I'm wondering, I might carry this with me. So I experienced racism and homophobia throughout my life at different stages, and that caused emotional and physical trauma. Alienation based on my sexuality and my race and my age as well, if I'm 85. I am turning 40 in October, and I experienced ageism. Once again, people thought that I just skipped school to come here. I got isolation due to real discrimination or perceived. So I may not have experienced it myself, but I heard someone who have experienced it. I might perceive those services to be unable or unwilling to recognize my identities. So that creates its own challenges. And of course, experiencing this everything, marginalization, multiple forms of marginalization have a negative impact on my health and well-being. And I carry that when I'm trying to access services. And if the services are not safe for me, it's actually going to deteriorate my health and well-being. So I like to few slides by encouraging you and empowering you. What's the next step? You kind of give us this picture about diversity, intersectionality, a lot of experiences, marginalization, oppressions, and all that. What's the next step? Well, I was thinking, you know what? Let's strip it back to the basic. What is our values and principles? What's guiding us to be in this room today? And this first one is our core belief in the human rights principles. Dignity, non-discrimination, equality. Something that came straight up from the department's handbook. Access, empowerment, quality, inclusion, accountability. Now, you see this too, and this is another reflection. Does your organization values actually reflect these guiding principles? The values, the core values for everyone to be treated with respect, dignity, without experiencing discrimination. Is it reflected in your organization values? If it is not, you might want to revisit that. How about your organization system? Now, I don't have time to go through organization system because there's a whole day of training altogether. What about the system? The system is not about the structure. The system is about your organization as a living body and how each part of the organization can contribute to inclusion, or if they don't work well together, whether one section of the organization is very much pro-inclusion, but the other part is actually the one who stopped. And usually that part is the leaderships. And we talk about the importance of leaderships to actually create a system change in an organization. Once again, I reflect on what's been said this morning, and I keep thinking, I keep hearing language barrier, that's blah, 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 we don't have bilingual worker, and I was sitting there in my little chair and thinking, why are you relying so much on a bilingual worker? Why don't you invest on a language class for your staff so everyone can communicate, no matter how basic it is, so everyone can communicate to your diverse consumers without waiting for that bilingual worker to arrive. What happened if bilingual workers got sick? What happened if that bilingual workers move on to a different position? It requires creativity and thinking outside of the box. This is just a quick kind of thing. I know the slide's going to be sent to you, so this is taken from the department's guide, the action plan. There's an action plan for cold. By the way, I do not like that word because of my accent, so it sounds like cold. You are so cold. So I like to say culturally and religiously diverse communities. This is their action plan. They have an action plan for LGBTI. Now, intersectionality. Hang on a second. We don't have training about LGBTI, but we also have training about people who identify as an LGBTI, but also culturally and religious diverse communities. We are going to have a focus group with people who identify as part of the uncalled communities, but then we also invite those who also identify as being part of the LGBTI as well. Just a very simple framework, a very simple reflection, and a very simple ways to start embracing intersectionality while still meeting the department requirements of those two action plans. So intersectionality is about creating a melting pot. Intersectionality is about recognizing all these connections. Create some little connections and actually create a big picture. It is about embracing that big picture. And it is also about our commitment to be an inclusive organization. I heard so many people talk about we are inclusive. But what they meant is, I am inclusive, my team is inclusive. Whether the organization is actually inclusive is a big question mark. Organizations need to be inclusive before we can actually promote ourselves as a champion in diversity and inclusion. And to be inclusive is to recognize intersectionality and to implement system change. So it's not an easy thing that I asked you to do. Why I left my job and decided to create my own company. You know? The false optimism of being under 50-year-old. Living my secure position and income to actually create something is not an easy thing to do, but it is a necessary thing to do. And Ian, once again, you mentioned it this morning, it is actually a necessary thing to do as we become diverse. So what can you do? What can you do sitting here, and what is your take-home message for today? Once again, it is about leadership and commitment. And you do not have to be a manager, a team leader, a CEO, or a board member to be a leader. All of you in this room is a leader. Just by being here, you already demonstrate your leadership, your commitment to diversity, and your willingness to stop, to listen, to reflect, and to learn from what we are going to hear all day long. Let's go back to the principles, our basic principles. It's about dignity, it's about equality, non-discrimination, equity, access, equitable access, empowerment. Let's go back to that. Whenever we encounter challenges, whenever we encounter questions, especially from the higher up, let's ask them to go back to our values. What's driving us to be in this sector, to do the work that we do, to get up in the morning, and to actually start making changes? Be a leader in reminding everyone about our core values and principles. And this is where leadership is important. Leaders must empower. We must empower everyone. We must empower each other, empower our staff, our consumers to actively participate in this process. We have to be accountable. As leaders, we can't just rely on the diversity and inclusion managers, on the culturally and religiously diverse consumers and working group, on the LGBTI working group, to fix the problem for us. All of us has to be accountable, and all of us must be held accountable for our actions and also inactions. We must be courageous. We have to. We are going to revolutionize the way we think. We have to be strong. And we support each other in our courage. And we also have to be very humble. Humble in what we know, humble in what we don't know. Once again, the willingness to listen, to reflect, to learn, and to grow. Because it is not going to happen overnight. You, as leaders, will make things happen. My question to you is, are you going to be one of those leaders? Thank you.